Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining the launch briefing for the Prison Leavers Innovation Challenge. My name is Sarah and I'm the policy lead at the Ministry of Justice for the Innovation Challenge. I am joined by Phil from Public, who is our delivery partner for the Innovation Challenge, and I'll be handing over to him a little bit later to introduce himself properly. I'm just going to talk through very briefly what we're going to cover today, if I could just get the next slide. So I am very briefly going to introduce the Innovation Challenge in the context of the Prison Leavers programme. I will also talk through in more detail what the Innovation Challenge is, what we're looking for, and also a bit of an overview of what's included in the project for those that successfully apply. I will then hand over to Phil, who will unveil our 6 very exciting new challenge statements, and then we will move into a Q&A at the end. We're hoping to close at around 12:15. If I could just get the next slide, please. Just worth saying now, please do submit any questions that you have throughout the presentation and we will answer them at the end. However, there will be a full Q&A published on the Prison Leavers Innovation Challenge webpage, so please do visit that for any questions that you have now. I also just wanted to say that this is an introductory webinar. We will be hosting an additional 2 webinars in the next few weeks. There will be one on the 20th of May that will specifically cover the evaluation requirements of the project, and then there will be an additional one on the 27th of May which will explore the prison leaver journey and user needs. So I would strongly recommend that if you're interested in applying, please do sign up for those on the Eventbrite page. The link will be available on the Innovation Challenge website later today and will also be shared with you after this event. So, by way of context, I will briefly just talk about what the Prison Leavers programme is. So, the Prison Leavers programme is a £20 million innovation programme funded by the Shared Outcomes Fund. And it's all about looking at new ways to address challenges in reoffending. So we know that many people, when they leave prison, really struggle to reintegrate into society with high rates of homelessness and unemployment, which can actually lead individuals to return to crime. And so the Prison Leavers programme is all about exploring different ways to address these challenges. And we refer to it as the innovation hub of the Reducing Reoffending strategy, because it's all about testing at a really small scale interventions that work so that we can identify opportunities to scale later on. And there are broadly 4 key principles that are at the heart of this programme. If I could just have the next slide, please. So the 4 key principles. Number 1, co-design. We're really clear that any interventions funded through this programme must be tested and shaped with the service users who are going to use them. And so a big part of the Innovation Challenge will be testing solutions with people either with lived experience of prison or those others that support them, be that frontline staff or families. System-led, so we are really keen that this programme takes a collaborative approach. This is an incredibly complex challenge and we know that no single individual or organisation can address it alone. So we are bringing together players from across the system to find solutions to this shared challenge. Thirdly, innovation. We are creating a space to test genuinely new and novel ideas to some of these challenges. As I say, this is the Reducing Reoffending Innovation Hub, and so we're really keen to test things that haven't been tested before to see what makes a difference. And finally, evaluation. We want to know what works in this space, and so we've actually set aside 10% of the total programme budget for evaluation so that we can see what works and what has the potential to scale. If I could just have the next slide, please. And so I won't go into too much detail on this, but broadly, the Innovation Challenge sits, as I say, within a wider programme, and there are 2 other strands to the programme. First of all, there's the cross-sector service communities, and these are staffed from individuals from across the sector, including the third sector, local authorities, and so on, to basically come together with that systems thinking piece in mind to come up with collaborative solutions to some of the main challenges in this space. So they're exploring pilots in employability and skills, health and wellbeing, community and relationships, and day of release. Secondly, there is the Local Leadership and Integration Fund, and this is really about empowering local leaders and agencies to develop solutions that are relevant to their local context, And so there is a grant fund available that launched earlier this year, which essentially allows organisations to come up with shared integrated solutions in their area. And then finally, there's the Innovation Challenge, which is what I'm here to talk to you about today. And this is the bit of the project where we are really looking for digital and technological solutions to some of these challenges. And we're really, really excited to see what the tech community can bring to this space. It's worth saying that the Innovation Challenge works really closely with those cross-sector service communities, so looking at a lot of those same themes and challenges in the reducing reoffending space. If I could just have the next slide, please. So I'm just going to talk very briefly about what is kind of included in the challenge and how it is going to work. So, as I say, we are looking for novel digital technological solutions. In line with our principles, we really want to see things that make an impact on those reducing reoffending outcomes that can be measured to help us understand what works. There are full kind of criteria and guidance available on the webpage for you to understand a little bit more about what we're looking for there. In terms of the phases, there will be broadly 2 phases to the programme. The first one will hopefully launch in August of this year, where up to 10 companies will receive funding of up to £25,000 to develop a prototype and test that with end users and service users. And this will culminate in a demo day where organisations will be able to showcase their idea. Up to four organisations will then be taken through to the second phase, which we hope will commence in autumn of this year, where they will receive up to £350,000 as well as mentorship support to develop their solution and design a pilot. And we really hope that once these pilots are set up, they will be able to run for 1 year, and this is to allow for that evaluation piece. Onto the next slide, please. Just to say a little bit more about that, as I say, there will be a further webinar next week to talk about the evaluation in more detail and to answer any questions that you have there. But just to be really clear, as I've said, being able to measure the impact of these solutions is really important to us. And so we are assessing applicants on their ability to measure the impact of their solutions. For those that successfully apply and get through to the first phase, they will be supported by our evaluation team to develop a proposal for how they could evaluate their solution if they do get through to the second phase. As I say, there is a further webinar about this next week, and more information about all of this can be found in the supplier guidance and the challenge context pack on the website. Have the next slide. In terms of opportunities, we think this is a really fantastic opportunity to be part of a really, really exciting programme. We are really, really excited to see what the tech community can bring to this space, and in exchange, there are a range of opportunities available for people applying. As I've said, there is funding available for both the prototyping and the piloting stage. Successful applicants will also receive mentorship from public and from specialists within the criminal justice sector. They will also be able to access service users, including prison leavers themselves and frontline staff, to test their solutions with to ensure that they really are effective. And they will receive support from our evaluation partners to ensure that they can really demonstrate the impact of their solution through their pilot with us. And if I could just have the final slide. So just to recap on the kind of timeframes and the way that it's going to work. So applications have obviously opened today. There will be 2 further webinars, one next week and the one afterwards, where you can get more information about that evaluation requirement, but also to help you really understand more about the prison leaver journey and their needs. Applications close on the 13th of June, and we hope that phase 1 will begin in August, with phase 2 beginning in autumn of this year. So as I said at the beginning, if you have any questions about any of that, please do pop that in the chat and we will get to that at the end. But now I will hand over to Phil to unveil our 6 challenge statements and talk you through a bit more about what we're looking for there. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much, Sarah, and good morning, everyone. I'm Phil. I led the team from the public side during the discovery phase of the Prison Leaver Innovation Challenge. The discovery was an 8-week process where we worked very closely with partners in the MOJ, HMPPS, and other parts of government to identify the challenges we're sharing with you today. A few words to our process. We first generated a long list of potential challenges and then assessed them to make sure that they firstly identify a serious problem or need that prison leavers face, And specifically, we took a lot of care to make sure that these weren't just problems faced by sort of the modal prison leaver, maybe a white young English male in a short sentence, but that these were problems faced by a number of different cohorts of prison leavers. We wanted challenges that were clearly linked to the objectives of reducing reoffending and supporting the social inclusion of prison leavers. And we also wanted to make sure that these were complementary to, rather than duplicative of, the incredible work already being done in HMPPS and planned in HMPPS Digital to bring more digital solutions to prison leavers. As you can see on the slide, we did that through a great deal of stakeholder engagement. That wasn't only with the policy leads on the various dimensions of the prison leaver experience, which spans finding, identifying, and accessing accommodation, employment, connecting with families and communities, and getting support in the realms of health and welfare. But we also engaged with frontline staff, including prison and probation officers, the third sector, and maybe most importantly, prison leavers themselves through various panels of both prison leavers and their families. We hope that the 6 challenges we're presenting today are important to a wide range of prison leavers and the MOJ, as well as actionable for suppliers. Now, there will be a future opportunity to discuss the prison leaver journey and these challenges in greater depth, as mentioned, I think on May 27th. Plus, we'll be releasing lots of this stuff in writing. It's also worth noting that many of the insights we weren't able to capture and share in writing will be, of course, sharing over the course of the collaboration for those suppliers that proceed to future stages of PLIC as we refine and evolve your solutions. So let's move on to the first of those challenges. Simply put, it's how can we enable prison leavers to track their goals, reflect on progress, and bring about positive behavioral change, either alone or with mentors. The key idea behind this is that building a positive non-criminal identity is a key step for prison leavers' desistance from crime. There is, and generally speaking, there is little support given to prison leavers in terms of nurturing the mental attitudes, beliefs, and self-perception that can contribute to desistance. In fact, instead of a genuine sense that leaving prison is a fresh start, prison leavers can often feel unsettled and uncomfortable when leaving the routines and environment of a prison they've become accustomed to, increasing the likelihood of reoffending. We're really interested in tools that can help prison leavers articulate and track positive steps, even small ones, in the hope that this will reinforce positive behaviors to encourage desistance. This is very much draws on solutions that we've seen in other domains, which leverage behavioral nudges, for example, in the medical domain, which is where these kinds of tools can improve moods and encourage adherence to medication for all kinds of different service users. In particular, we're keen to emphasize technologies that can further enable or augment mentoring relationships in a one-to-one or group setting. Of course, there's a number of organizations that support prison leavers in a more service-oriented way, and we're looking for tools that can help this, that can add a relatable human element to the solution, potentially delivering these kinds of mentoring relationships at scale. Let's move to the next challenge. Great, which is about how we can inform, coordinate, and update relevant stakeholders of a prisoner's day of release details and key appointments. In short, prison leavers' engagement with key organizations on their day of release can build ongoing relationships with services that steer them away from reoffending. In fact, many day of release service providers are often unaware of the many other appointments prison leavers have to attend. As a result, if a prison leaver misses their first appointment with the service because they're in another location, for example, for a different meeting, they're less likely to engage again with that service. In fact, some services require attendance as part of a prison leaver's license conditions, whereas others are important because of the ongoing support they provide to that prison leaver. In either scenario, making it to appointment soon after release is important for reducing reoffending immediately and for building relationships with services that will reduce reoffending over a longer time period. Great. Let's move on to the next challenge. The key idea of this challenge is how we can enable prison leavers to collect, control, and share their data with relevant stakeholders. What we've seen is that lack of access to key documents and data such as identification, birth certificates, and a 5-year housing history can limit prison leavers from accessing jobs, housing, and banking, which of course increases their likelihood of reoffending. In fact, many prison leavers don't have a secure store of their personal data. This might include the information I mentioned before. It could be things also related to their bank account details or other personal information, potentially even related to their service, to their sentence. Now, very importantly, many of the organizations delivering services to prison leavers are unable to share data from prison and probation systems that can lead to inefficiencies, duplication, and missed opportunities to address their needs. In fact, prison leavers often find themselves repeating the same information many times to different organizations, even though some of this information is already in government databases. Our hope is with this challenge that prison leavers, by having control of some of this information and putting it in their own possession and giving them the ability to share it as they need with different services, it can enable their ability, it can empower them and help them access these different services on the other side once they've left prisons in a more seamless and straightforward manner. Great, let's move on to the next challenge. The fourth challenge is about supporting families to strengthen and sustain relationships with prison leavers to reduce reoffending after release. We found that families are an important part of creating a positive environment that contributes to a prison leaver's desistance from crime. In fact, prison leavers can find it challenging to reintegrate back into the family dynamic upon release in a way that take accounts of their issues and experiences. In particular, children are often unsure about prison process and can have misperceptions about prison that acts as a barrier to their relationship with prison leavers. However, we've also seen that family members can be a very beneficial part of the prison leavers, contributing to prison leavers' desistance from offending. There's a strong body of evidence that shows that behavioral management and skilled supervision reduces reoffending, and familiar figures such as family members could provide that kind of informal support. Great, let's move to the next challenge. The fifth challenge is about connecting prison leavers with relevant social and peer-to-peer groups upon release. Basically, building new pro-social community ties can support prison leavers and engage, can stop prison leavers from engaging with old criminal networks after release. Often prison leavers are released to new areas where they have no contact or support networks, especially for those that are trying to avoid reintegration in communities that unfortunately supported their offending behavior. This can be, of course, also due to certain license conditions that bans them from certain areas, or just a consequence of where available accommodation is. We find this is particularly important to older offenders and female offenders who are often in certain kinds, that are often further away from where they, from the communities that they were in prior to being in prison. And it's also important for those estranged from their families who have fewer links to their communities. In short, we found that building a sense of community is key to prison leavers' well-being and desistance, and that a lack of positive social networks increases a prison leaver's chance of being involved with criminal networks. Great, and let's move on to the sixth challenge, which is about assisting probation officers in managing prison leavers with learning difficulties and disabilities. In short, crucial information relating to conditions of release and services can be challenging for prison leavers with learning difficulties and disabilities to fully understand, increasing their chances of reoffending. Given the high workload of probation officers, they often have little time little capacity to spend time on providing, for example, accessible material to prison leavers with learning difficulties and disabilities. Having a solution which easily integrates into the workflow of probation officers that benefits prison leavers with those difficulties and disabilities would therefore be beneficial. We also hope that these kinds of tools could potentially support those with limited digital literacy and lower literacy overall. Great, that's the final challenge. All righty, do I take this? I suppose I do. Great. Great. All I meant to say here is that there's additional places where you'll be able to find information relevant to the challenges and to the process. We have a number of documents that will be shared shortly. This includes supplier guidance, which lists the criteria that applications will be assessed on, additional challenge context pack, which provides, of course, extra information about the prison leaver space relevant to challenges. Of course, we also have the additional webinar on May 27th, where we'll be able to share more information, and a frequently asked questions document where we'll be able to find answers to many, hopefully many questions that are on your mind. Of course, if you have any further questions, there's ways to get in touch with us directly.
Okay, fantastic. So hello everyone, just to introduce myself, my name is Surika. I'm a program manager at Public, which has been working alongside the MOJ. So we are now going to open up the floor to Q&A. So really encourage everyone to send in questions, both about the program in general, but also in terms of each individual challenge and kind of anything related to yourself and your interests. I will highlight that, as Phil mentioned, there is an FAQ section on the UK Gov guidance page. And we will be updating this every week, so you can submit questions as time goes on. So one of the few questions we've gotten in a few times is just if slides are going to be shared after this. So everything will be uploaded onto that UK Gov page. And as Phil mentioned, there's already a lot of existing information up there. So that was a few people asking that, but moving on to our next question, which is for Sarah. So this came from Hazel, which is that it's really fantastic to see that this fund is available. And for successful solutions, how are you going to address any procurement challenges that might arise during this program?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's definitely something that we're aware of as being kind of historically a challenge. And one of the things we're really excited about with this project is being able to bring new organisations into this space that maybe haven't previously worked with government. And so we are looking by working with Public to ensure that successful applicants have all the kind of support they need to ensure they have a route to market after the pilot. We will be, as I said, providing kind of mentorship support as well to help with that, and there will be a demo day which will basically invite kind of possible end users and interested stakeholders along to hear about the showcased technology. But yeah, the short answer is it's something we are aware of and we are working on as part of this project.
Fantastic, thank you, Sarah. Next question is just when will people hear whether they have been selected? So we should hope to reach out to people who have been participated for interviews, which will happen after the application phase within June, by Monday, 21st of June. But there is going to be timelines and suggested dates published as well. And then a question for Phil. Could you expand slightly on what research was done around selecting the challenges and kind of how you came to the 6 that were chosen?
Yeah, absolutely. So as mentioned, we started with a long list of challenges that was generated by engaging a wide range of individuals inside the MOJ, HMPPS, other government departments, including DWP, HMCLG, and Department for Health and Social Care, to make sure we get all of our partners listed. So to make sure that these aligned with policy leads understanding of the reality of prison leaving. But of course, that was sort of the starting point. We then made sure that all of these were tested with individuals who are sort of, so to speak, on the front line in the case of staff, but of course, prison leaver themselves. As we mentioned, we had a number of panels, I think 3 in total, 2 which worked with prison leavers, slightly different demographic profiles, and the 3rd which engaged their families to make sure that all of these challenges sort of the view from the service user was sort of aligned with the view with the policy lead. On top of that, we did a great deal of desk research. So we were, the Ministry of Justice has quite extensive sort of user journey maps, which we consulted, as well as evidence related to documents related to what has and hasn't worked in similar interventions in the past. And so we hope that the challenges that we bring to you, I mean, just to illustrate, I think we started with something in the sort of mid-20s, that the 6 that we've chosen for you today have been vetted and sort of on all different dimensions, and are sort of robust, not only to sort of, changes that might happen as a result of the end of COVID, but also as a result of changes taking place in June with the sort of change in the National Probation Service.
Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. I guess just to jump in, we do hope that successful organisations applying to the challenge will be able to access all of our kind of research. So we will be able to share that with people who apply. I think I've seen another question that says, will you be sharing existing journeys with us? And yes, I think for those that apply, we will be able to share those materials. And there will also be that additional kind of webinar in a few weeks to talk through that in more detail.
Perfect. Thank you, Sarah and Phil. The next question is, do the tech solutions need to answer all 6 challenges? So in terms of the solutions, when you apply, you will pick a specific challenge that your solution will create a solution for. We are encouraging people obviously to think long-term about multifaceted solutions, but at the initial stage, it is definitely kind of your proposed solution will be for a specific challenge. And I know I saw another question about, will you be ranked or scored higher if it applies to multiple challenges? There is incredibly clear evaluation criteria published under the supplier guidance, which will be on the Gov page, which gives an overview for each sections and how measurability will work. And I will also flag the upcoming webinars, which will also be very helpful to understand how best to design your proposed solutions. So in terms for the next question then is for Sarah, which is the 6 challenges are very well selected. Thank you very much. They are well defined, but also quite well known. So solutions are likely to be cultural as well as technical. So if you could maybe talk a little bit more about how the winning solutions would have the best chance of being widely implemented.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think, yeah, really well noted about the kind of cultural points. I suppose we, as I said at the beginning, are really aware that this is a kind of systemic challenge rather than just one organisation. And so we do have a lot of buy-in from other government departments, HMPPS and other partners here. And I think we can really bring that into this. We will be, for example, during the sort of shortlisting phase, running a kind of number of workshops and events, bringing together partners to sort of help test and shape those solutions. And so, as I say, we're really hoping to kind of have buy-in from across the sector into this. As I say, we're also really keen to ensure that there is access to end users and frontline staff through HMPPS, for example, to make sure that any solutions that are funded have been kind of thoroughly tested, and we can really demonstrate that they will kind of work. I hope that answers your question.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sarah. So the next one is just clarifying that these challenge statements are relevant both to the £25,000 opportunity and to the up to 350. So yes, the challenge statements will not change depending on the prototype or the piloting phase. The shortlisting prototyping phase is to help fully develop the solution and make sure it's as tailored as possible to the user needs and to the kind of solution situation. And then the piloting phase is for people, as Sarah mentioned earlier in her presentation, to have it in more of a steady state. And then we have another question, which is that we are not a technology provider, but a third sector organization who are working directly with prison leavers. How do we best engage with the tech providers on this program? So there's a few different ways that people can integrate with the program. So there we do have the option for people to apply as a consortium, which is where, for example, a technology provider would work with a third sector charity to design the solution together. One thing I will flag is that when you are applying, we would need the lead organization to apply, and we would require that lead organization meet all of the necessary eligibility requirements and criteria. And another way, obviously, is if you are, we have worked, as Phil mentioned, alongside several third sector organizations and charities throughout designing this process. So we would love for people to reach out to us on how we can best work with them and any kind of experience, or if they wanted to work as partners or cohorts with various tech solutions as well. So there are a few different ways you can get involved, and would definitely recommend everyone to reach out if they think they fit into that niche. So for the next one then, and I will say we do have a lot of questions flying in. We really appreciate how engaged everybody is. We will do our absolute best to get to as many as possible, but just to kind of reestablish that we will also record all questions sent in and post all relevant updates on the website. But Sarah, next question is for yourself. So is there a priority for those with lived experience to apply for this challenge?
That's a really good question. It's not something we're giving priority to, but it's something that we strongly encourage. We're really keen to embed kind of lived experience into this project as much as possible. So yes, definitely encouraged to apply there. And as I've said before, a strong requirement throughout this innovation challenge that any tested solutions are also kind of shaped and designed with people with lived experience as well.
So this one is, I think, for Sarah and Phil to kind of both give their thoughts on. So what limitations does the Ministry of Justice have on what technology is used to deliver these novel ideas? that focuses on these kind of 6 challenges.
Phil, I don't know if you want to take that one. I know that there are kind of technological sort of requirements that are set out more in the kind of guidance on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the starting point for this is that, the part of the point of the innovation challenge is to sort of let y'all come up with whatever you think is the most suitable solution. I think, bearing in mind the constraints that, data needs to be managed in a secure and safe way, that this has to sort of be actionable in a prison context, in a prison or prison leaver context, right? And so we sort of are open to different approaches and different kinds of solutions. If there's, for example, a hardware element, then and that can be delivered in a cost-effective way to a say large enough group in order for an evaluation to take place, then that's totally fine. So which is a question that often comes up in these sorts of contexts. No, I mean, feel free to let your imagination run wild.
And not to kind of keep repeating it, but the webinar we have coming up on the 20th, which will center around evaluation criteria, should be incredibly helpful to outline the best way to deliver and ideate these solutions. So then the next question then is also for Sarah. So one of the things the Ministry of Justice or Her Majesty's Prison Operation Service have struggled with is including smaller BCSEs in these types of tenders in favour of sometimes larger organisations and institutions. So how can this kind of be different than perhaps what typically happens there?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, to be honest, we really are kind of prioritising those smaller organizations here. So you'll see in the kind of application requirements that you're not able to apply if you've, for example, worked in this space with government before. And so we are really prioritizing smaller organizations who haven't worked in this space. The competition is run through something called the Small Business Research Initiative, which is all about basically funding small businesses to work in kind of government environments, because we really want to give smaller organizations the opportunity to work in this space. So yeah, definitely we're really keen that this isn't just another straightforward procurement where we give contracts to big organizations. We're really keen to bring in those new smaller organizations with those great ideas and great technologies.
And just to kind of follow on, there's a question that relates quite similarly to that, which is this limited to tech startups and SMEs or all suppliers? And is it just for kind of private sector companies, or can charitable organizations apply? So as Sarah mentioned, there is definitely a preference for SMEs to apply for this challenge. We want to really prioritize those novel, really innovative ideas. There are certain kind of eligibility requirements, such as you must be a registered company. There'll be a certain number of employees that you'll have to be able to deploy to this solution. Obviously, we would like to have people who are able to deploy within the UK as well, because that's where it's based. All of this, again, is outlined, but the application is open to everyone, but there is a preference for SMEs, as mentioned. And then kind of a question then on the application, which is, what is the format for the application? So after this event, our application portal will go live. The link to it is on the guidance page, which there is a link to in the Eventbrite description, but also we will be sending an email after the event with links to that page and also upcoming events as well. When you follow that, there is then a application portal where you can register, make an account, and then all of the questions are there. The applications are open until the 13th, so you have plenty of time, and you can save as a draft. So you can start your application, save it, and then kind of come back to it as you need. And all of the information about how best to fill it out, or any information that you need to best fill that out, is included on the guidance page as well. And you can also, if there's anything that you're unsure of, there's a form on that page for frequently asked questions. Submit your question there, and we will be updating that weekly as well. So then in terms of kind of the next one, which is again, kind of Sarah and Phil, feel free to jump in. Some of the 6 challenges can be developed prior to leaving custody and carried on then throughout the gate. How can you assure that there is time, that there's a digital infrastructure to support solutions throughout that journey?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Phil will have a lot to say on this as well, but that was something that was very much at the back of our minds when we were coming up with the challenge statements, and we've had a lot of engagement with HMPPS Digital around this to ensure that number one, that there is no duplication of existing interventions planned in that space. So we really want to make sure any pilots that are funded through this program complement the work that is already happening rather than duplicate it. And we've also ensured that we have taken account of any kind of technological sort of infrastructure needs that in terms of kind of interoperability or anything like that. And the digital teams will be kind of supporting us as we go forward with this project to make sure that that is kind of all fed in and joined up. I don't know if you wanted to say anything else on that, Phil.
Yeah, I think one part of digital infrastructure is, of course, the interoperability with existing systems. And as mentioned before, we have great relationships with those that are managing those systems, and hopefully we'll be able to integrate seamlessly where sort of APIs exist. But as regards things like Wi-Fi, of course, there's a great range of prisons in the UK, some with better, some with worse connectivity. The part of what we did in choosing these challenges is ones which is these are problems that are focused on when a prison leaver has left prison, but of course the engagement and the solution could potentially reach into the prison itself. But such that if a solution potentially needs to be applied in a prison, or would be better if applied in a prison, we can then work with those solutions to explore the possibilities for doing that, of course, within the constraints of laws and prison regulations and things like that. And so I would say focus on maybe the post-prison leaving moment, but there will be opportunities potentially if a solution could be better if there was a part of it which bled into the pre-release phase of a prison leaver journey that we could work with you to make to get that trialed as well.
We have quite a few questions lined up in terms of the program and kind of the back end and how that works. I'm going to try and go through a few of them now, but Sarah and Phil, please feel free to jump in on any of them as well. So one of them is, will applications be accepted by startups that have an existing product but require further development to support prisoners? So as we have mentioned, and we'll continue to emphasize, that we are encouraging novel solutions and novel designs. This is an innovation challenge, so we will kind of be searching for that. We understand, obviously, it does take time and energy to create and develop products and solutions. So we will be kind of assessing and looking at people who have existing solutions, but it would need to be redesigned specifically for the prison leaver space. And that, again, is something that will be kind of evaluated through the assessment product. So we will be looking at them and assessing them, but I will kind of just emphasize that novelty is really key in this, to make sure that we're coming up with kind of new solutions in really exciting and innovative ways. And that is something that is reflected in the scoring of the application. And so the next one then is there scope for networking between organizations that are interested in applying and have good ideas, but in isolation are unable to deliver all aspects of the proposal? So i.e. organizations that can provide safe spaces for learning, accommodation, mentoring, but don't have the in-house tech skills required to design, etc. So I think we linked to this slightly earlier as well, which was that we have said that people can apply in a consortium, which is where a third sector organization would link with a technology-based company to design a solution. And I believe Sarah and Phil both emphasized that throughout the designing of these challenges, we have really encouraged kind of third sector organizations and people with lived experience to help us shape and design these to make sure that we do have the most applicable and also realistic solutions. So I think definitely for any of the organizations and SMEs that are applying, we will be encouraging throughout our own application phase, but also would really encourage you before you send in your application to do research and to learn about the environment. And I will flag Phil will be helping to run the Prison Leaver Journey webinar, which is happening in 2 weeks, which will be a really good one. The research team of Public alongside the MOJ did really extensive research with several stakeholders to ensure that we captured those needs and issues and how best to kind of have impact and measurement from that. So that would be also a really good one just to learn about in general. Next one then is a question for Phil, which is, on the basis that there are 6 challenge statements, but only up to 4 companies to proceed into the piloting stage, how will you ensure that all 6 statements will be addressed? But Sarah and myself also feel free to jump in on this one because it kind of covers the breadth.
Sure. I mean, simply put, we recognize that 4 solutions are unlikely to cover all 6 of these challenges. In fact, we're totally okay with the possibility that only 4 or potentially even fewer than that are addressed. Ultimately, we wanted to give ourselves some room to really work closely with a very promising solution rather than go for a range if we felt that that longer tail potentially wasn't likely to succeed, especially given that in order to build a sort of fully fledged solution, it often makes sense to be able to guarantee sort of a larger pot of money up front. And so for those reasons, yes, unfortunately, it will likely come to pass that not all 6 challenges will have a solution piloted in the PLIC context.
Okay, next one then, Sarah. So this is someone who has already worked in the penal justice system. So they said, I've already worked in the penal justice system that has even won awards, but I've never had the collaboration that seems to be on offer from all the men and women that took part in my pilots who are in the justice system. They're no longer on their radar. So in terms of how they're able to collaborate, the question is, I'm sorry, apologies, I'm actually stumbling on this, I apologize. How are we able to offer solutions to men and women in the prison justice system? So I think what the question here is asking about is digital inclusivity. Is that something we have considered? Is it something we have mentioned that originally we started from a male cohort, but how have we kind of framed the challenges to ensure that it's inclusive in a way? I think this person has experienced digital inclusivity in their experiences with the penal justice system. Oh, Sarah, you're on mute.
Apologies, that was always going to happen. Yeah, it's something we're definitely mindful of, and I don't know whether this is something that Phil can talk about a little bit more from the research that Public did, but we were kind of aware that inclusivity is a challenge. Obviously, a lot of prison leavers are either excluded or do not have access to digital technology, and so we have tried to find solutions that are applicable to all prison leavers and that kind of either work around that by being aimed at the sort of people who support prison leavers, such as their families or staff, or can kind of be addressed through other ways. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that, Bill.
I think the one thing to add is that the reason that we budgeted quite a bit of time for a prototyping phase is in order to make sure that solutions that are sort of promising can engage with all the individuals in the MOJ, HMPPS, in the third sector and service users themselves to get that kind of feedback from people with in particular lived experience to make sure that it is indeed applicable to a wide range of prison leavers. We recognize, unfortunately, that a digital tech solution already comes inbuilt with potentially some limits on who can access that. And so we're really keen for solutions that can, through some sort of clever design feature, potentially be as inclusive as possible to all kinds of different prison leavers of different backgrounds.
Fantastic, thank you so much. So then the next question is, will potential applicants need to have cyber essentials as part of their digital solutions? Phil, do you want to take kind of a head on this and we can fill in as well?
For us, digital data privacy and sort of systems integrity is very important. And so we have, maybe Circa and Sarah to confirm, we have set a requirement that that suppliers either have cyber essentials or be working towards cyber essentials with a credible plan of achieving that certification. Our understanding is that it's actually this is something that is not an undue burden on suppliers, and that there's both ways to make that quite cost and time efficient. So our hope is that that's a good balance between the need for sort of privacy and integrity, but also accessibility, access of suppliers to this challenge.
Thank you so much, Phil. Sarah, one for you and probably one relating to Henry's webinar that's coming up. Is this project currently focused only on adult prison leavers, or does it include kind of young offenders? And will those pilot programs be run in public and private prisons or establishments?
Yeah, so in terms of the first part of the question, we are predominantly looking at adult prison leavers. That's where the bulk of our kind of discovery work has taken place. So we are focusing on the adult male cohort predominantly, although as Phil says, we are looking at solutions that can be applicable across the board. In terms of where the pilots will take place, that is something that our evaluation team will be supporting successful applicants to determine. So we will kind of advise on where the most appropriate place to pilot is later down in the programme and support with that process.
Fantastic, thank you so much. So we had a question in asking if companies that already deliver technology to prisons will be excluded. So on through the application, we do have questions about the company or consortium's experience with the prison space, the kind of Ministry of Justice, working within government. And again, just to kind of reiterate, so we are looking for novel solutions. So an application of existing technology that's already being applied within this space wouldn't fit the criteria laid out for that. And we are looking, and again, to re-emphasize, we're really trying to design with user needs and also obviously the Ministry of Justice needs considered within the solution, which is why we're having this first phase of shortlisting where you really get to work on kind of designing that solution to fit the needs as much as possible. So kind of a commercially off-the-shelf available product that's already being implemented wouldn't be a fit in that sense. So I think we still have a few questions, but we're coming near the end. So the next one is, does the innovative solution need to be financially viable throughout the private sector, or is it the view that it's something the public sector could possibly pay for once proof of concept has been produced? So just to revert back to the funding that we mentioned at the beginning. So for the pilot phase, it's up to, for the shortlisting phase, it's up to 25,000 to help develop, and then up to 350,000. And those pilots would be expected to continue for roughly a year in a steady state so that they can be properly evaluated. And then based on kind of how well that pilot runs and what the opportunities arise out of that, there is room for potential kind of additional contracts running from that. But that is a longer term solution and something that we will plan with and work with the companies that get to that pilot phase once we kind of evaluate them running through that steady state.
Can I just add to that? I suppose we do anticipate that these solutions will have value to kind of the system, and that there will be kind of real world value to public sector buyers, and that's why we've got that kind of system buy-in from other government departments and other partners as part of this project.
So the next question is just to double check. Regarding phase 1 and phase 2 process, will phase 2 for selected companies be picked from the 10 previously picked companies, or is it 2 different lots? So just to re-emphasize, so yes, it's all one application. It's all the same set of challenges from phase 1 and phase 2. Really would recommend everyone to check out the additional challenge context pack, which is up on the guidance. It gives a really nice overview of what the different phases are. I understand it might be difficult to understand in kind of a verbal format, but essentially people will apply. Out of the initial applications, we'll pick up to 10 that'll go into a shortlisting phase. And then out of those 10 selected, up to 4 will be selected for a piloting phase. And that'll happen through the demo day will be part of the evaluation, which happens in phase 1. And then several interviews and reports and weekly meetings that will happen that will evaluate the companies throughout the time. And then there's a question for Phil. And this is referring to kind of meetings you would have had throughout the discovery phase surrounding kind of technical needs and requirements. So is there information available from HMPPS Digital Studio on the APIs available or NDELIUS, or would we ask the PLIC team specific questions kind of referring to the solution? So I suppose, again, just kind of what the digital requirements of the solutions will be.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, as regards integrations with existing systems, unfortunately, we're not able to publish sort of comprehensive API documentation at this stage. In part, this is linked to a previous question about work currently being done on these systems. They're constantly, of course, being evolved and upgraded. And so it will be a little bit more on sort of on a kind of conversational basis of what kinds of integration that you're looking to deliver. And you'll be, of course, in the prototyping phase, able to engage sort of a very deep way with people on the HMPPS digital side to make sure that that integration is indeed viable, such that when it comes through the second phase, that can be confidently executed.
Perfect. We've had a few questions just inquiring about the different types of companies that can apply. And I know we've mentioned this slightly, but just to kind of re-establish. So we've asked if it has to be registered companies or CICs, which I believe is community interest companies can apply. So we do require that it be a registered company that apply. People can apply as a consortia. A consortia is when you apply with a charity or with a third sector organization. However, the lead organization must send in the application form, and they must meet all of the requirements laid out in terms of both digital requirements as well as also kind of company registration, insurance, health and safety guidelines, all of that which is laid out in the application form. And they will need to meet all of those requirements. So I understand it can be a little confusing in terms of how to apply and who's registered. All of that is written down, and hopefully we've made it clear here. But for any instance, the lead organization will always have to be compliant with all the regulations and requirements laid out. Next question is for Sarah, which was asking who will own the intellectual property of any solutions that are developed throughout this process?
Yeah, so through the Small Business Research Initiative, which is the kind of type of procurement that we're running, SMEs or applicants will retain the intellectual property of their proposals.
Perfect, thank you. And then Phil, for a question for you. And I think this is a kind of a good one to emphasize the difference between the users who will be using these solutions. So how do residents access an app or technical solutions from establishments where there might be no IT or Wi-Fi or etc.?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think if I could pose a question back to you, it would be, what do you mean by establishments? If you mean prisons, then I think the idea is that we're emphasizing sort of the prison leaver part rather than the prisoner, which is why most of our solutions are ones that, or most of the challenges apply to prison leavers who have already left prison, right? Our hope is that, and our research showed that a significant percentage of prison leavers have access to smartphones, do have access to data, not necessarily sort of as a data plan, but they can access Wi-Fi from different places. So our hope is that there will be sort of, a way for enough people to engage with these solutions once they have left prison. But as mentioned before, this is unlikely to be something that engages with, that is designed with prisoners themselves in mind. The other point that I think is important is that we have in a number of challenges involved sort of the individual surrounding prison leavers rather than the prison leaver, or in addition to the prison leavers themselves, in the hope that those individuals are probably more likely to have access to both the hardware and the internet access required for some of these solutions potentially to work.
Okay, fantastic. I think we are coming near to the end of our questions. We have had a phenomenal amount sent in. So I think we've just got one left, which I'm happy to take now. And then Sarah, maybe you might give us kind of a nice end off then. So the question was, well, a two-part. One question has been asked a few times. I think we have answered it, but just because it seems to keep coming up, people are asking what will be shared after this event. So just to reiterate, the slides will be published on the guidance page, and we will send out an email to everyone who has attended. And there also is a contact form on the guidance page as well. So if you know someone who wanted to make this and didn't make it, they can put their details in there, and we will send out information about upcoming events, as well as obviously all the questions will be added to the FAQ document. So don't worry, you won't have to remember everything straight away. We have kind of sent as much material as possible out. And then the final question again was just asking kind of, do suppliers have to have a kind of trading history, accounts, kind of what the criteria is there? This is also laid out and will be covered both in the application phase, the guidance doc, and might be briefly touched on in Henry's webinar next week, which is the webinar around evaluation. Yes, we do require that you be a registered company. We do ask about kind of previous experience and trading history, but as we have said, we are encouraging SMEs and novel solutions. So we understand that it won't be the kind of traditional large organizations with many years of experience, and that's something that we're really embracing and encouraging. And as long as the kind of the company is established, you can also work with partners who might be slightly newer, such as community or charity organizations. So I think that brings us to the end, which is quite nicely on time. I'll just move over to Sarah to say goodbye, and then just a reminder to check out the webpage and check your emails after the event.
Great, thanks, Zerka. And yes, just thank you very much, all of you, for participating and for all of your questions. It's fantastic to see so many of you here, and yeah, just really looking forward to seeing what we get through with this. Please do join the next couple of webinars, but if not, we will be sharing materials and Q&A online, as Zerka says. But yeah, just again, massive thank you for joining today, and speak to you soon.